There is a strange, seductive warmth in the feeling of being wronged. You know the feeling? It sits heavy in the chest, a mix of indignation and exhaustion. The world has acted against you. The boss who doesn't understand your value. The partner who doesn't listen. The economy that stalled your career. The parents who didn't love you enough. In the moment of injury, we feel pain. That is natural. But what happens next is a choice we rarely acknowledge. We take that pain and we wrap ourselves in it. We build a narrative around it. It feels good in a twisted way to say, "This is not my fault." There is a profound relief in powerlessness. If your failure is caused by the system, you don't have to work harder. If your unhappiness is caused by your spouse, you don't have to change your own behavior. If your stagnation is the result of your childhood, you are absolved of the responsibility to build your adulthood. We call this venting. We call it seeking support. But often what we are actually doing is taking an anesthetic. The victim narrative is the most potent painkiller in the human pharmacy. It numbs the stinging reality of our own agency. It tells us that we are good, noble, and misunderstood, and that the world is cruel, chaotic, and blind. But like any anesthetic, it comes with a cost. It puts you to sleep. And while you sleep wrapped in the warm blanket of your own innocence, life continues without you. You are safe, you are blameless, and you are completely, utterly trapped. The Stoics understood something about human psychology that modern therapy often dances around. Epictetus, a man who spent his youth as a slave, a literal victim of circumstance, refused to adopt the mindset of one. He argued that there are two worlds, the world of events and the world of judgments. Events are neutral. They are just atoms colliding. A lost job is simply a cessation of income. An insult is simply sound waves moving through the air. These things happen to us, but victimhood is not an event. Victimhood is a judgment. It is a story we tell ourselves about the event. The transition from "I was hurt" to "I am a victim" requires your consent. It requires you to look at a situation and decide that you are the passive object and the world is the active subject. This is where the danger lies. When you identify as the victim, you are outsourcing the locus of control. You are handing the keys to your emotional stability to the very people who hurt you. If your peace of mind depends on an apology that never comes, you are a slave to the offender. If your self-worth depends on the world finally recognizing its mistake, you will die waiting. The Stoic shift is not about suppressing emotion. It is not about pretending the pain doesn't exist. It is about recognizing that the narrative of unfairness is a cage you have built yourself. The door's unlocked, but to walk out you have to leave your innocence behind. You have to admit that you have a role to play in your own rescue. And for many of us, that is terrifying. Why do we stay in the cage? Because we get paid to stay there. In our society, victimhood is a currency. It buys you attention. It buys you validation. It buys you a temporary reprieve from expectation. When you are the victim, people tread lightly around you. They offer sympathy. They validate your anger. "You're right," they say. That is terrible. You didn't deserve that. These words feel like gold, but they are fool's gold. When you trade your agency for pity, you're making a terrible bargain. You're trading your power for comfort. The Stoic realizes that pity is a toxic asset. To seek pity is to admit that you are beneath the events that occurred. It is a declaration of defeat. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor of Rome, faced betrayals, plagues, and wars. He wrote to himself not to seek sympathy, but to seek stamina. When you stop playing the victim, you lose the applause of the sympathetic crowd. People may even think you are cold or detached because you no longer join in the ritual of complaining. You must be willing to be misunderstood. You must be willing to let go of the social credit that comes from having a sob story. True strength doesn't need an audience to validate its struggle. Psychologically, the victim lives in a perpetual courtroom. In your mind, you are constantly putting others on trial. You replay the arguments, you draft the closing statements, you present the evidence of how you were wronged to an imaginary jury. If they only knew what I did for them. It's not fair that they succeeded after what they did. This internal litigation consumes massive amounts of cognitive energy. It exhausts you, it makes you bitter. And the worst part, the court is empty. No one is listening. The verdict will never be read. The Stoic practice here is the suspension of judgment. You must dismiss the case, not because what happened was right, but because the trial is irrelevant to your future. The energy you spend prosecuting the past is energy stolen from the present. You have to fire the judge in your head. The moment you stop trying to prove you are right, you free yourself to simply be. You stop looking backward for justice and start looking forward for utility. Here is the hardest truth, the one that makes the victim mindset so difficult to abandon. If you are not the victim, then you are responsible. If you acknowledge that your reaction is your choice, you can no longer blame your parents for your temper. You can no longer blame your ex for your trust issues. You can no longer blame the economy for your lack of skill. You have to look at the wreckage of your life and say, this may not be my fault, but cleaning it up is entirely my duty. This is terrifying. It exposes you to the risk of failure. If you try and fail, you can't blame the wind anymore. You have to blame your own sails. This is why the victim mindset is dangerous comfort. It protects your ego from the bruise of failure, but it also ensures you never leave the harbor. The Stoic embraces this terror. This is the concept of amor fati, loving your fate. Not just tolerating the difficulty, but realizing that the obstacle is the raw material for your own character. A fire does not say, it is unfair that this wood was thrown upon me. The fire consumes the wood and burns brighter. You must become the fire. Let us be clear about what happens when you kill the victim within you. The world will not suddenly treat you better. In fact, people may treat you worse. When you refuse to be a victim, you become a mirror to those who still are. Your composure will irritate them. Your refusal to engage in gossip and complaint will make you an outsider. You will lose the easy bonding that comes from shared misery. You will stand alone more often. There is no parade for the Stoic. There is no external reward for taking responsibility. But there is something else. A quiet, ironclad silence in the center of your being. When you stop blaming the world loses its power over you. The strings are cut. You're no longer a puppet dancing to the tune of other people's actions. You are simply you, unbound, unafraid, and entirely terrifyingly free. The cage doors open. The choice to walk out into the cold air of responsibility is yours. It has always been yours. So why are you still sitting there,